everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of TemTalk, a podcast dedicated to the creature collection MMO Temtem. While in this podcast, I'm going to cover aspects of the game including news, development coverage, community feedback, and information for both casual and competitive players. I'd like to focus this episode on answering the question, what is Temtem? To help out anyone considering buying the game. Right off the bat, there's no point shying away from the elephant in the room, and that is Pokemon. Yes, Temtem is clearly inspired by Pokemon. Is that bad? I don't think so. I think it's great, and it doesn't seem the developers shy away from that fact either. Any fan of Pokemon is going to feel very familiar and at home playing Temtem, especially when starting out in the game, it has you waking up in your bedroom upstairs, proceeding to go downstairs to speak with your mother before heading over to the lab to meet a professor-type character, as well as your rival, and then choosing between one of 3 different starters, and then setting off on a journey to get to the next town so you can battle the first dojo, which is Temtem's version of Pokemon gyms. Pokemon and Nintendo obviously have a lot of proven success. People love it. And seeing another game getting so much attention in the same genre is pretty exciting if you ask me. Sure, if the game was a complete copy-paste and very unoriginal and not doing anything interesting or new or worthwhile, it wouldn't be that great. But I and a lot of other players apparently, since over 500,000 copies have been sold already so far, seem to think that there's something here, and it's a good thing. Standing on the shoulders of the giants that come before you is something really common in the creation and production process for anything creatively or production-wise, and how a lot of evolution and progress happens in any type of area. The question that just remains is, can they do something new? Can they do something better? Can they make it interesting? Can they take advantage of the space and put their own take on it to make it a worthwhile experience and to continue the journey of creature collection that Nintendo started? And regardless, I think if any Pokemon fan should be excited about Temtem. It's either going to be a game that you're going to love playing. You're going to be able to supplement your Pokemon play with this other great game that's the similar type of game, and it's going to fill in the gaps for you while you wait for the next Pokemon game. Failing that, or on top of that, I should say, not failing that, on top of that, it might replace Pokemon for you as something that you like even more. But in either of these scenarios, even if you don't want to play Temtem and you don't want to, be disloyal to Pokemon, let's say, it's still great news because something successful in the genre just means Nintendo's going to pay more attention. They're going to step their game up. They're going to try harder in the next game and deliver even a better Pokemon game. So no matter how you look at it, I truly think it's good news for Pokemon fans. And with that said, I don't even want to try to answer the question, is Temtem better than Pokemon, or at least Pokemon's latest installment, Sword and Shield? I think that's kind of a silly question. I don't think it's a question worth answering, and most importantly, it's very subjective, so there's not really a correct answer that can be proven. The only thing I'm going to point out is that there are a lot of reviews out there about Temtem for people who have put a lot of time into Sword and Shield, and in these reviews, they express some dissatisfaction with certain areas of Sword and Shield and feeling let down of certain areas of it. And they find Temtem very refreshing and a nice alternative and doing things better in areas that they wish Pokemon would have, or doing new things. So I think that's a positive thing all around for Temtem. Of course, the funny question is to ask yourself is the creators of Temtem, they're called Crema Games. They're based in Madrid, Spain. They're a pretty small indie game company, but the question is, are they going to get sued? Is Nintendo going to shut this down? What's the point of this? It seems so much like Pokemon. The answer is probably no. No, they're not going to get sued. You can't legally usually go after people for something like this. It would be like the makers of Call of Duty suing someone else for making a first-person shooter. It's just not going to happen. But with that said, if you look at the Kickstarter for Temtem, they had an FAQ section back in the summer of 2018, and one of the questions they asked is Nintendo going to block this game or shut it down? Obviously, that's something that people were thinking and wondering. So here's the answer that they wrote there at that time. They said there is not a single indication that that's going to happen. We're already registered Nintendo developers. We have a game released on Switch called Immortal Redneck, and our relationship with them is good. We're not using any patents or copyrights from any other company. Everything in Temtem is made from scratch. And they go on to say there's a lot of games heavily inspired by Nintendo titles on the Switch and DS already. And they list some examples, like a game called Brawlout and Jump Ultimate Stars. Both of these are apparently very similar to Super Smash Bros. Games like Wargroove, Advanced Wars, and Oceanhorn, which is like Zelda. So they're saying that they're known for their takedown, but they're only taking down games using their IP and designs. And like they've said, we're not using any of those. There are many creature collection games, both fan-made and commercial, already out there. And they're really hitting the nail on the nose there. To be frank, Nintendo's going to make some money if this goes on the Nintendo Switch, and they're not going to have a lot of grounds to sue them. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think the lawyers are going to suck up this game. So with the legal concerns out of the way, let's talk about Temtem. What is Temtem? How is it like Pokemon? How is it different? Right away, I want to talk about the graphics of the game. It's very cartoony, it's very cute, it's very warm. I can't help but feel happy when I play the game and I'm in the world and I have the music going on. I think that's a great, very strong trait of the game right off the bat. Pokemon has great graphics too and is very cartoony and simplistic and follows the same path, but Temtem has its own design, its own aesthetic. It's similar, but it's different. They've chosen to go for this the cartoon approach rather than more a realistic approach, for a proven over and over in game development that the games that have these cartoony feels, the performance runs better, demands aren't as bad. And with that said, the game does run really well. I haven't run into frame rates issues or performance issues. The reaction times are very quick and feel very fluid, and moving around in the game feels good. Looking at the game feels good. The game feels very polished. I'll say right now the game is in early access. This is an early access game. But the content that they've made available and they've delivered in this is polished. It feels finished, the content that is available. And I really enjoy that, and I think a lot of other people do. So often, a lot of early access games don't do that. And as you learn more about Crema, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the studio making this game, they seem to do right by people with their choices. And it seems like they weren't going to charge any money for this until you had a product that was fairly finished. And I'll go into how much of the game is available and how much is going to be coming out. But talking about the actual game now, just like in Pokemon and Temtem, there's different types of Temtem. In Temtem, those types are called normal, fire, water, nature, electric, earth, mental, wind, digital, melee, crystal, and toxic. It's pretty obvious some of those are just like Pokemon. They have nature instead of grass, wind instead of flying, mental instead of psychic, excuse me. But they're, they call them a few different things here and there. They've added a few ones that are very not Pokemon, like digital and crystal, for instance, are kind of their new ways of branching out. And it's kind of theme that I think gets repeated through Temtem is that most of these types are right from Pokemon, but they're not the exact same types from Pokemon. They added some new ones, and the Pokemon that you see from digital and crystal feel like new distinct types, not like just a renamed version, such as calling nature grass nature. So it's interesting. Just like in Pokemon, your Temtem level up. They gain experience from knocking out wild Temtem and battling trainers. And as they level up, they're going to learn new moves. Something that's great about learning these new moves, though, in Temtem is, yes, you can only have 4 on a time. You have to choose your moveset of 4. Just like in Pokemon, and I think in a more than Pokemon, there's more depth and strategy to team design in the battling, which I'll get into. But a nice quality of life decision is that if you replace a move with a new move, at any time outside of a battle, you can change a Pokemon's moveset. And excuse me, I'm going to call them Pokemon constantly. I'm going to use these words interchangeably. Everyone does. You can change a Temtem's moveset. Point is that if you forget a move, you can instantly put it back in your moveset. There's a menu that says, here's the 4 moves they know. Here's the other moves they could know. You can swap around as much as you want. And there's things like TMs and HMs as well, or there's just TMs, excuse me, and they're called courses, I think, in this technical courses instead of TMs. So you level up. And Temtem evolved just like Pokemon. But again, they evolve like Pokemon, but something's a little different. In Pokemon, they evolve at set levels. I don't know off the top of my head, but Charmander always evolves at level 16 or 18. I don't know. Pokemon fans are going to be yelling at me for not knowing the exact number. But the point is that despite whatever level you catch a Pokemon at in Pokemon, they're going to evolve at a set level. In Temtem, they evolve after a set number of times of leveling up. So what that means is if you catch one that at level 20 and it evolves after 10 levels, it's going to evolve at level 30. But if you catch a wild Temtem of the same species at level 29, it's not going to evolve in one level at 30. You still have to level up 10 times to 29. Again, what does that mean? It means that it always feels like a nice progression for the evolution, that you're not going to have Temtem instantly evolving on you, that you're going to have to put in some levels. But it also means that if you catch really low-level ones, you're not super far away from evolving. You still only have to level up 10 times. So again, it's a nice evolution of this mechanic, I think. Just like in Temtem, just like in Pokemon, has effort values and, effort values and intrinsic values, or something like that. But basically the stats of wild Pokemon that you catch. Not all Pokemon are created equal. Some do more damage, some have more health, represented by stats that you improve through breeding. And there's also stats that you can improved by training and knocking out Pokemon. So for the online battles and the competitive players of Pokemon, they're taking a lot of time to methodically train the stats on the Pokemon to be exactly what they want. Well, Temtem has all of that too. They're called IVs and TVs in Temtem. IVs, their intrinsic value, I think, which is what they are when you catch them in the wild, ranging from 0 to 50, and there's 7 different stats. And then there's TVs, which you can train, basically. So what that means is, yes, there's breeding in Temtem, and you can get perfect Temtem through a bunch of breeding and a bunch of effort, basically, if you want to. And if you don't want to, you don't have to for a more casual player. But for a hardcore player, for someone who wants to play this as an MMO and put a lot of time into it, there's a lot of potential there, right? So let's talk about the number of Temtem. Just like a normal Pokemon game, there's usually like 150 new Pokemon. Temtem, their goal is to have 161 plus Pokemon, so 161 or more right now. Available in the early access game is about 76 or so. In general, about half of the planned main story game content is available right now. But you're going to see, like I said, about 161 or so Temtem in the finished version. So it feels like a good number, I think. It's not an obscene number where there's just so many different ones you can't learn them all and they don't seem meaningful. You're as you play the game, you're gonna quickly identify and know them. But there's enough of them. There's a lot of variety and there's a lot of decisions on who you want to have on your team and which ones do you care about. And of course, in any creature collection game, one of the most important things is going to be the design of the creatures. Pokemon wouldn't have been successful if people didn't really love Pikachu and Squirtle and Bulbasaur and Charmander and so forth and many, many more. And there's really cute Pokemon that people love, and there's really cool, intimidating, scary, mean-looking Pokemon that are cool, and the aesthetics are really important, obviously, right? And so that's got to be important in Temtem. There's no way to shine around that. But it's a subjective thing, again, of course, aesthetics like this. My first impression, I'll be honest, is in the starting area, I was kind of like running into some Temtem, and I was like, well, these guys are kind of generic looking, kind of basic. Like, I don't see, like, this doesn't, like, I'm excited about this game because it's a Pokemon MMO, but I don't know if I love these guys. And they seem kind of, ordinary or not crazy out of the box. But then as I played the game more, I really fell in love with a lot more of the Temtem, and I started having favorites, and they started growing on me. And I kind of stepped back and realized that, in starting areas of Pokemon, if you think of Gen 1, when you, like, walk out of the first town, what are you seeing? You're fighting Pokemon that is a rat, is a pigeon, and is, like, a caterpillar. Like, they're pretty basic as well. So I think it's actually kind of follows that same line of where they have the less... more mundane, normal-ish Temtem-inspired animal Temtem in the early game, but you get into more interesting ones as you go. The bottom line is I really like them. I personally have I'm quite impressed with what I've seen so far, and we've only seen about half of what they have in store, so there's twice as many to come still, but you're going to have to check those out for yourself. Look at some pictures online, see what you think. I don't think they're going to do them justice. I think you have to play the game. You have to have a bond with them. I don't know if Pokemon, in a vacuum, if you looked at a Pokemon without any contents, if you would have fallen in love with it, but you fall in love with them because of playing the games, because of the shows. And I think physically and aesthetically, there's just as much effort and success, and they've done just as well with Temtem. But, I mean, that's very subjective, and everyone's going to have opinions on that. So it is what it is, right? But just like Pokemon, there's something in this. Instead of a Pokedex, you have a Tempedia, which catalogs which Temtem you've seen, which ones you've captured, and so players can focus on collecting them all, and seeing all of them, just like in Pokemon. I mean, this is one of those areas where I'm talking about. They're not afraid to shy away from the fact that this is a Pokemon-inspired game. I don't think there'd be any point to it. I don't think they're going to be fooling anyone. There's a Tempedia instead of a Pokedex. Something else is, in Pokemon, for the more hardcore players and who people that like to spend a lot of time in Pokemon, of course, they know about shinies. Special Pokemon that are super rare, that are different colors and have slightly different appearances and are shiny, but they're very hard to get, and they're the pride of anyone's collection. Well, of course, Temtem has the exact same thing. They're called Lumas in Temtem. And the base rate to find one right now, and this is subject to change. Anything I say is subject to change in this game. It's in active development, it's in early access, despite there being a lot of game to play now and a lot to do now. Things are going to change and be developed. But right now, for instance, It's a 1 in 8,000 chance to find a Luma out in the wild in Temtems. They're incredibly rare. If you go on Reddit online, you're going to see people posting pictures of them, being very jealous, and the Lumas look incredible compared to the normal ones. I'll say it's an opinion whether you like Temtem versus Pokemon, but they definitely nailed the Lumas. I want them. Everyone wants them. They're very cool. They're worth pursuing, and they should be for how rare they are. And they have said that they're going to add more active ways to increase your odds for getting Lumas. Right now, there's something in the game called Park that you can have a better chance to get Lumas of certain Temtem each week. But I'll go into all of that in some future episodes. We're going to leave that aside for now. All you need to know is yes, there are shinies in Temtem. Let's see what else. So let's talk about some more differences in Temtem. I can't forget. Maybe I didn't mention it. If you didn't catch at the top of the show, Temtem is an MMO. It's an online game. It's story-based. You're playing through a story, but it's online. And what that means is you can play it co-op. You can play from the very beginning of the game to the very end of the game co-op with a friend. And that's pretty cool. With that said, the battles in Temtem always have 2 Temtem out. Yes, Pokemon has multiple Pokemon battles now, but it's not the default. In Temtem, it's the default. Every battle is 2 Temtem on each side, so up to 4 Temtem in a battle. I love it. It's great. What it means is that there's just more depth and choices to the battles. You're picking 2 moves a turn. You're picking who you're targeting, who you're switching out to. It just leaves room for depth in it, and the whole game is balanced based on this foundation that everyone's going to have 2 Temtems out at a time. And they've taken it a step further. They have something called synergies in this game, which is where certain moves of Temtem have a synergy if the other Temtem that's on the field that's friendly is a certain type. So you could have a water Temtem out with a water move that has a fire synergy. So if you use that specific move and your other Temtem is a fire type, it's going to get a bonus effect. It's going to do more damage. It's going to have a longer status effect. It's going to do something differently. And the idea is that the Temtem are working in conjunction. Like I think one of the examples is, it's like high pressured water. So like the fire Temtem is literally heating up the water before they shoot at the other Temtem. Point is, this is where the game starts to have a little bit more depth than Pokemon. In that when you're designing your teams, you're considering this fact. You might pick your 3 favorite Temtem as half of your team, and you want to know what should I pick for the other 3. Well, you might pick 3 Temtem that have types that activate synergies on the first 3. It just leaves room for theory crafting, right, on these move synergies. A bigger change and deviation from Pokemon is Temtem have stamina. So when you use a move in Temtem, it has a stamina cost. Each Temtem has so much stamina and regenerates so much stamina each turn. And this replaces the PP system in Pokemon. The PP system in Pokemon, if you're not familiar, which anyone listening to this probably will be, but if it says that you can use this move, X number of times, and there's a counter every time you use it, it goes down. And if it hits 0, you can't use that move anymore. So you can run out of PP in a battle if you overuse a move, so you have to use a different move. Or if you're out playing the story and adventuring, there's only so many battles you're going to be able to fight, even if your Pokemon stays healthy, because you're going to run out of PP, and eventually you're just going to have to go back to a Poke Center, and you're going to have to heal. By the way, Temtem has little Temporiums where you heal, and they have little stores where you buy stuff, it's Poke Centers and Pokemarts. There's no point denying that. But anyways, you eventually in Pokemon, you just run out of PP. And, I never had an issue with that system until I saw something different and realized that there's a better way, and it's stamina in Temtem. In Pokemon, if you had a really awesome, powerful Pokemon that just wasn't dying and you could just plow through a bunch of trainers and wild Pokemon, eventually you still run out of steam and you have to go heal or restore the PP or switch to a different one. In Temtem, that's not the case because it's stamina. But more importantly than that is the choices it forces you to make in battle, the decisions you have to make. Really powerful moves that do a lot of damage are going to have a high stamina cost. And if you use it on one turn, you might not be able to use it the next turn. So you have to plan out your moves and how you want to use them and manage your stamina. If you use a move that it costs more stamina than the Temtem has, it's going to damage itself when it casts that move as a penalty, and it's not going to be able to take an action on its next turn. So there's just a cost and risk, benefit, and trade-off here that just makes the battles a little bit more interesting. And I think in the long run is going to give the game some more depth and make it just a little bit more strategic than Pokemon. I don't want to overstate it and say that, it's way more complicated or way more harder than Pokemon. No, it's not. It's the same concept. But just these little things make it a little more interesting, right? And a little more fun. And I think it demonstrates how this game is taking the genre to the next level. With that said, I think it is safe to say Temtem is harder than Pokemon. That seems to be pretty commonly agreed by anyone playing Temtem who's played a recent Pokemon game. It's been said that you can pretty much play through a Pokemon game without a lot of hard decisions, that it's pretty easy to just kind of steamroll through the game and just play through it, and you're not really mentally challenged on your choices of Pokemon and moves. Temtem is not the case in that. I had this experience, and I think most players do. You maybe won't now because I've warned you, but when you get to, I got to the first dojo and I couldn't beat it. I lost immediately. I got straight to the dojo in the story. I went straight in, got to the dojo master, and I lost. And I was like, okay, that's not great. And I tried to adjust a little bit, and I immediately went back in. I fought him again, and I lost again. And I was forced to look at the types of Pokemon that the dojo leader was using, and I had to go capture another type, that was going to counter that and train that up and go back in there, because I had to use type advantage, or I was not going to be able to beat that gym leader. And that's a common trend. You'll see a lot of guides online about how to beat the first dojo. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's impossible the first time. If you level up the right Temtem and have the right Temtem, you'll be able to beat the dojo when you get there. But the point is, Temtem is definitely more challenging than Pokemon. It's hard to argue that point. And that's great. I think it makes the game more fun. And on that level, I think despite the cartoony, warm graphics, Temtem does have an adult audience in mind. It knows that a lot of its customers are going to be people that played Pokemon as a child and are a little bit older now. Yeah, the game's cartoony, but it's got some adult elements on top of being a little bit more challenging, but not overly adult that a child couldn't play the game or it wouldn't be safe playing the game. But just for instance, two of the characters in dialogue reference getting drinks. I don't think they ever mention alcohol in Pokemon. And there's a side quest where you help an elderly couple, connect and basically hook up. And it's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge little nod from the game. And there's some very, very minor curse words thrown around in the dialogue in the late game as well. Nothing extreme making the game R-rated, but certainly more adult feeling than Pokemon ever did. With that said, it's fine for young children to play, and they've made it acceptable for that audience, but they've given it a little bit of an adult tone, I think. Of course, the big thing compared to Pokemon is this is an MMO. You're online at all times. You can see other players at all times. At the time of recording this, there's actually not a chat system enabled. They disabled it. That's, a lot of people want it really badly, and there's a lot of controversy around that. I'm not going to get into that, and eventually it will be there, but it is an MMO. You're online, you see other players, you can play through the storyline with your friends, and there's a lot more online features coming, so that's definitely something that stands it apart from a normal Pokemon game, right? So what's in the game right now? I mentioned it's in early access, I mentioned not all the content's there, and I mentioned I was going to help people consider if they wanted to buy this game, if they should. The game's going to have 8 dojos or 8 gym leaders, just like a Pokemon game would. And it's going to have, like I said, 161 Temtem. Right now, there's 3 islands in the game with 4 dojos on them. And I say islands because the setting of this is called like an archipelago, it's all this land floating in the sky and in the clouds. So it's kind of a fun setting, right? And it's very cute. But there's 4 dojos available right now and 76 Temtems. So about half of the main storyline is available. Now, they market that and say it's like 12 to 16 hours minimum of gameplay in that story, but I think that's very underreported. Well, I've seen other people's comments online of 20 plus to 30 hours. I personally was just under 30 hours playing through the story for the first time. I don't think I played it very slowly or meandered, but I did explore every nook and cranny of each map. I went all over all of the maps before proceeding to the next one. I captured all the local Temtem I could to try to keep my Tempedia up to date, and I tried to complete any side quests as I went. Yes, there are side quests. That's another thing that's different from Pokemon and makes it a little more MMO. There's little side quests that pop up. You have your main storyline that you're progressing through, but you get side quests from characters to go do certain things, and you have rewards for that, and just adds a little bit more to do. So I tried to do the side quests I could do. I didn't do all of them. The point is, I got 30 hours out of the storyline my first playthrough. If you were speed playing through it and not doing all this and just not reading dialogue, yeah, it's probably about 12 hours of gameplay, but it's at least 20 to 30 hours of gameplay for the normal player. And the price point of Temtem is $35 right now. You can only buy it on Steam, but it is going to come to consoles later. But my point is, you're spending $35 for 30 hours of story play. And there's more game after the story. If you're interested in the MMO part of it, there's other things to do right now. Not nearly as much as there's going to be at end release, but it's not just that 30 hours. What I'm trying to say is I think it's a fair price for what you get right now. With that said, they have advised that they will increase the price of the game as they add more content and get closer to the full release. So if you have any interest and know that you're going to play this, buy it now, save the money, get the cheaper price. It's the way to do it. So I mentioned like the end game right now, stuff that you can do after playing the story. Basically, you can make money in the game by catching wild Temtem and releasing them, so you can start building up your wealth in the game. You can breed Temtem to get the IVs and TVs. Yeah, just like in Pokemon, there's breeding. The system works a little bit differently. I'm not going to go super into depth to it right now. It's something I'll talk about in a future episode. And you can also hunt for these Lumas or these shiny Temtems, right, as well. So there's players that are spending all their time just trying to get some really rare Lumas. And there's a lot of players, me included, spending a lot of time breeding Temtem so we can get our perfect Temtem team. You know, I want a team of my 6 favorite Temtem with all max stats and all the moves I want. And there's egg moves that you can only get through breeding. So there's a lot to do with breeding right now. So basically, you can make money catching Temtem. You can catch Temtem for breeding. You can catch Temtem for shiny hunting right now, on top of the main story, if that's your thing and if you're a little more hardcore. If you're more casual and you just want to do the story, well, there's about 30 hours to play. You know, it's up to you if you want to just wait till the full story's there or not. I hope either way that you'll stay in tune with the game and follow the game by listening to this podcast and checking in and seeing how it's going. Let's talk about platforms. Right now, it's only on the PC. They don't have plans for Mac or Linux. I'm so sorry if you're a Mac or Linux user. I know that I have a couple friends, or at least one friend, you know who you are, who's going to be disappointed that it's not coming to Mac. At least it's not planned to right now. Who knows what might change in the future. But it is coming to PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox once the game fully releases, which is slated for spring of 2021. Until then, PC only. They have said the game will be cross-platform, so that's pretty exciting. You'll be able to play across platforms with friends, and they said that it's possible that you'll even be able to play across saves. That's not confirmed, but they think it's something they're going to be able to do. So you can play on the PC and then switch to playing the same character on the Switch. I'm excited about that myself. The developers have actually recently just put out a big roadmap for what's going to happen and what they're going to add for features and content between now and the full release in spring 2021. I'm not going to go over that in detail right now. That's too much information. It's going to make a great future episode. But I do want to just comment very quickly on the features that are coming that aren't in the game now, so you know more about the game and what you could be getting into. Or if you're already playing the game, maybe you don't know this stuff's coming and you can be aware of it now. So they are going to add mounts. You're going to be able to ride certain Temtem. It's going to increase your character's speed, and it's going to allow you to avoid wild encounters. So that's pretty cool. They're also going to add clubs in the game, which is like their take on clans. And there's also going to be club wars or dojo wars, which is some kind of group PvP, hybrid PvE content. Who knows exactly, but it sounds really cool, right? That's kind of the MMO mode coming out. There's going to be a ranked PvP queue. There's going to be some kind of endgame PvE content. There's going to be an endgame island where players are incentivized to spend their time after playing through the story and have stuff to do there. There's going to be mythical Temtems added in that you can have, I think, just one chance to catch, basically, or you can only catch one of at least anyways. There's going to be an auction house for selling Temtem that you've bred on or captured that are rare or have very good stats. So there's going to be an in-game economy. I mentioned right now players are breeding and selling Temtem. They're doing that all through Discord. So you can trade with other players in-game, but there's no auction house in-game, but there will be eventually. There's also going to be player housing and customization of that housing with different furniture pieces. There's going to be a lot of player customization. Actually, the player customization right now is pretty cool at character creation. It's something I want to take a moment to talk about. In any MMO, of course, the appearance of your avatar is really important, and a lot of people care a lot about that. There's a lot of choices in Temtem for clothing and body and hair and eyes. So I think that's a good thing and something in its favor. Something that a lot of players really like. As well is there's a non-traditional gender selection. You can choose your pronoun basically and say that your character is he or him, she or her, or they or them. So I think it's a nice progressive decision by the game developers there. There going to eventually be some arcade games or arcade game mode in the game. We know the developers, they've said that they really have a soft spot for arcade games, and they're going to bring those into the game somehow. So it's just going to be some fun extra content. There's also going to be a Nuzlocke mode where It's basically a more hardcore mode where you play the game that if a Temtem on your team ever faints, the Temtem is permanently released. So basically, upon death, you lose Temtem. So it's going to be a way to replay the game or play through the game with a little bit more hardcore take on it. So the bottom line is there's a lot to do right now in the game, and there's a lot of exciting, fun stuff coming. So I think that's enough for now. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're just getting started. I hope I've done one of two things here. I've hoped anyone that's on the fence in the game but interested is, I've helped you make a decision if you want to try the game. And for those of you already playing the game, I hope you'll tune in the future and stay connected here and listen to hear more about the game as it's developed and more content's available, and I'll go more depth into strategies and things to do and all of that. So anywhere you can find podcasts where you found this, please hit that subscribe button so you can get the future episodes. And this is a new podcast. It's my first episode, so of course I would appreciate anyone's help getting the word out. If you have people interested in the game, please let them know about this. And of course, as you've heard of anyone that's ever listened to a podcast, if you could leave a positive review, that would really help me get some visibility and traction. With that said, if you have any comments or feedback, or more importantly, you have a question that you want me to answer in a future episode, or a question about something in this episode, you can email me at temtalkshow@gmail.com. Again, that's temtalkshow@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.